Good morning, students. So today I am going to take a class on basic of object-oriented programming with C++. In this class, I will try to cover all basic details of object-oriented programming with reference to C++ programming. So in this class, first I discussed how procedure-oriented programming is different from object-oriented programming and what its advantage. So if we see in the part A overview of object-oriented programming. So first, object-oriented paradigm. First we discuss software evaluations, then evaluation of programming paradigm, monolithic procedure-oriented programming, structure-oriented programming, object-oriented programming. So this is the hierarchy of programming language, how evaluate from one to another. Now if we see structured versus object-oriented programming, then in case of structured programming, then function oriented, it is function oriented, but object oriented programming is object oriented. So procedure abstractions. So here for structured programming, procedure abstraction is implemented, but in object oriented, both procedure and data abstractions is implemented. So in structured oriented programming, then it does not support external interface, but in object oriented programming support external interface. So free flow but free flow of data is actually seen in structured programming, but secure data not freely flows in object oriented programming. So also called function oriented programming, and it is called object oriented programming. So structured programming also known as function oriented programming, but OOP means object oriented programming. So now actually we are basically concentrate on OOPs. So elements of OOPs. So well suited for object oriented programming is very well suited for number one, modeling the real world problem as close as possible to the user perspective. Number two, interacting easily with computational environment. Number three, constructing reusable software components and easily extendable libraries. Number four, easily modifying and extending implementations of components without having to record everything from scratch. So elements of object-oriented programming. Now if we see the definition of object-oriented programming, then object-oriented programming is a programming methodology which associates data structure with a set of operators which act upon it. So it is actually combination of data structure with a set of operators. Next, elements of object-oriented programming consist of, that means if we see the basic terminologies that heavily used in object-oriented programming is object, class, encapsulation, data abstractions, inheritance, polymorphism, dynamic binding, message passing, etc. So object, what is object? So object-oriented programming use object as its fundamental building blocks. So without object we cannot think object-oriented programming. So it is the fundamental building blocks of object-oriented programming. So objects are the basic runtime entities in an object-oriented system. So it is the basic runtime entities. Every object is associated with data and functions. That means attributes and behavior, which define meaningful operations on that object. So object is a real world existing entity. We can also define objects as real world existing entity. So object is an instance of a particular class. So we can also define in terms of class, object is an instance of a class. So now this is object. Suppose this some attributes through which objects is actually characterized, but we can identify, and some operations, behaviors of objects. Suppose example, student object. Okay, student object. So here student name, student ID, branch, semester, these are the attributes, properties, characteristics, fields. And enrollment, displaying info, result, performance, these are the operations, that is functions, behaviors. So you can define student object in this way. Now class. If we see what is class, then class is a collection of similar objects. So a collection of similar objects is constructed for a class. For example, this is a class. These 7 objects, similar objects, similar characteristics, it gives similar information, similar attributes. So this is a collection of objects and constructed class. Now come to encapsulations. So mechanisms which associate the code and the data it manipulates into a single unit and keeps them safe from external interference and misuse. So encapsulations means actually combinations of data as well as functions. So it combines in a single unit both data and functions, attributes and behavior, and make a single unit which is also known as class in object-oriented programming. So here you see class, student, attributes, student name, student ID, branch, semester, functions, enroll, display info, results, performance, and this is the encapsulate. This is actual combinations, and finally we have found a class student. So data abstractions. So a data abstraction is simplified view of an object which includes only features one is interested in while hides away the unnecessary details. That means it concentrated only important features, not unnecessary features. So data abstractions hide the unnecessary details and it displays, it focus only essential things. So data abstraction becomes an abstract data type or user defined data type, additive. So now if we see C++ implementations, so then we define a class. So class keyword is used and a class name, and it consists of attributes, properties, fields, or operations, behavior, functions. As a whole, this is a class. Similarly, if implementation, suppose we take an example, class students, then these are the character, student name, character, student ID, character branch, character semester. These are functions, these are properties. Actually, here these are data members and these are member functions. We will discuss later. And then it is constructions of class students. So here some another feature, another specifications, public visibility mode, private visibility mode, protected visibility mode also comes later. So similarly, if we define a class tag, then integer size, text size, then integer top, then void integer, these are the member, and then finally close. And every class is ended with semicolon. So inheritance. So inheritance is the mechanism to provide the power of reusability and extendability. Inheritance actually which inherits properties from a base class to derived class. So inheritance is the process by which one object can acquire the properties of another object. So this is the concept of inheritance. Suppose this is point and this is line. So from line point is inherited, but from point line is inherited. So point is a parent class or base class, and line is a side class or derivative class. So this is how inheritance occurs. Now polymorphism. A polymorphism means the same thing can exist in two forms, many forms. So polymorphism is in short and the ability to call different functions by just using one type of function call. So polymorphism, later on we go details, different categories of polymorphism. So function overloading, operator overloading, again different constructor overloading, so partial function. These are example of polymorphism. So this is how polymorphism actually plus then we do different things. This is addition and this is concatenations. Okay, this is example of polymorphism. Dynamic binding. So dynamic binding is the process of linking of the code associated with a procedure called at the runtime. So it is the way how we bind linking. Actually, it is a process of linking the code associated with function call at the runtime. Message passing, the process of invoking an operations on an object in response to a message. The corresponding method is executed in the object. So message passing is this. Suppose student object, faculty object, and management object. So some faculty performance. So faculty give performance to students, student give some results, and management look after the faculty. And this is the how messages are passing in the object-oriented programming. So object-oriented language. So object-based programming language. Actually, there are two types: object-based programming and object-oriented programming. So object-based does not support inheritance and dynamic binding. For example, ADA. But object-oriented programming language support both inheritance, dynamic binding, etc. above all other issues. So example similar Objective C, C++, AFL, etc. So C++ overview, if we see, then structure of C++, that include class definitions, class functions definition, main function program. This is so how C++ programming allows. This is actually this is preprocessing directive including header files. So main, and then this is the body of the main and return 0. So how preprocessing works: C++ preprocesses C++ preprocessor temporary file C++, then C++ compiler and executive program. So first recording here, then preprocessing direct preprocessor here, then we temporary file creating, then we compile the program, then executive program is created. So input output. So C++ we see in this is input operators variables. So if we press 25, then see in a integer a, then this is a variable, so a store 25. So this is how we input in C++. Next, for output statement, suppose this is this monitor, then cout welcome to C++, then we give so cout this operator, and finally we display the informations. So a equal to 100, cout a, then 100 is this. A equal to 10, cout the value of a is this, then this way. Similarly, we can see, so now C++ language. So C++ programming language is a collection of tokens, comment, white space. it is lots of tokens, comments and WordPress. So again, tokens are reserved word or keywords. You can divide 5 types of tokens: identifier, literals, operators, separators, punctuators, etc. Then reserved word has predefined functionality. C++ 48 keywords written in only lowercase. So keywords are very reserved word which has special meaning to each compiler. So we cannot use 48 keywords here and there. Some specific meanings we can use here. These are nothing but all keywords in C++ programming. So case, volatile, catch, character, do, constant, continue, default. These are some. These are for the identifier. So programmer design tokens. So meaningful sort. This is actually variables. You can also call variables which are going to be used in C++ programming. So the alphabets, digits, underscore. So not start with digit. Case sensitive, unlimited length, declare anywhere. These are the identifier scope. So literals, so sequence of character that represent constant value to be stored in variables. So C++ literals are integer literals. Means 1, 2, this is floating point literals. So 4.6 this is character literals. This string literals. So it is double quoted ABC. Remember, character is single quoted and string literals are double quoted. So literals using constant. So in the enum keyword is you can define literals enum xyz. So x equals 0, y equals 0. So you can define some literals. Operators. So is a symbol that takes more than one operands and operates on them to produce some results. So operators, it helps to do some specific tasks. For example, arithmetic operators, relational, logical, assignment, increment, conditional, scope resolution operators, special operators, new, delete, and else, w. These are all operators in C++. So for arithmetic purpose operations, then arithmetic, so relational operators do some relational task, logical, assignment. These are separators means punctuators. So symbols used to indicate where groups could divided range. So C++ separators, punctuator, parenthesis, method, precedence in expression, process, array, initialization, block of code, scope, semicolon, and semicolon to end the statement, comma, separate multiple identifier, dot period, data members, method, brackets, array, referencing, dereferencing. These are nothing but punctuators or separators in C++. So C++ statement, if we see C++ statement, so exponential expressions, labeled, control statement, guarding statement, so selection statement, iteration statement, jump statement. So if we see selections, if else, switch, so iteration, while, do, for loop. The loop also it is jump, break, continue, return. This arrays in C++. An array is a consecutive group of memory locations. So array is a collection of similar data elements. So here how memory allocated in arrays. So integer S6. That is integer arrays which size is 6. So if you see integer from A to A5, so here we can store similar integer values here. So A0 location stored first and A5 last. Finally 6 elements stored of all integer types. So this is initializations of arrays. So integer A5, so 5 elements are actually you can store double this is double, and character, so character. In this way different types of arrays are we can initialize. So array printing function. So suppose we print some values of array. So then for print array integer, here we pass the array and its length as parameters. So for loop it is iteration statement. So for initially I0, I less than length, I plus plus. So it is consisting 3 statement: initializations, conditions, and updations. So cout, this is finally cout array, so we can have print all elements of array. Array of character special, so C++ provide a special way to deal with array of characters. So character string, this C++, so character arrays can be initialized with string literals. So this is nothing but string literals. Two-dimensional arrays, so here row size and column size is given. So integer a3 4, that means total row 3, column 4. Name of the array is a, so it consists integer data values. So column 0, column, so this is finally we have a matrix of 3 by 4 matrix. Did I mention memory organizations, how it is stored? So initially array wise, initially row wise, then finally as a whole. This a is an integer array of size 4. 3 by 4 means first we have 4 rows and 3 columns, so in this way. So this is C++ string. So C supports C string. C++ defines string called a class known as string class. So the string class supports several constructors. So prototypes of commonly used one is this. So this is C++ operators. So this is assignment operators, concatenations, equality, inequality, less than, greater, less than equal, greater than equal, read, write. These are some operators. So strings, and this how. So modular programming, the process of splitting of large programs into small manageable tasks and designing them independently is known as modular programming or divide conquer technique. That means we divide the whole program in some manageable task, small module, then it is modular programming. C++ functions. So there are a set of program statements that can be processed independently. The block of statement which do some specific tasks. So like in other languages called subroutines or procedures. Advantage: elimination of redundant code, easier debugging, reduction of the size of the code, leads to reusability of the code, achievement of procedure abstraction, etc. Function component, function prototype, that means declaration of function definitions, declaration and body, function parameters, formal parameters, function return statement, and void function call actual parameters. So this is simple example of these functions. So integer add, integer a, b, return a plus. That means it is addition of a and b is done by this function. So it returns integer value, that is a, and it takes two parameter a and b, formal parameters, function name, return type, and this is function body. Using match library functions, so match.h is the some library function which including the header file match.h. So C++ has a library of match functions that use. We have to know how to call these functions before we can use. We have to know that this preprocessing directives include match.h. So these are some mathematical functions which are defined in which are found in match.h. Function parameters, formal parameters are local to the functions. When the function is called, they will have to value passed in. The function gets a copy of the value passed in. Then local variables, so parameters and variables declared inside the definition of function are local. They only exist inside the function body. Once the function returned, the variables no longer exist. So block variables, that means you can also this global variables. So global variables, you can declare a variable outside of any function definition. These are variables are global variables. Any function can access hence global variables. Scope: the scope of a variable is the portion of the program where variable has meaning. So a global variable has global scope, unlimited scope. A local variable scope is restricted to the function that declared the variable. A block variable scope is restricted to the block in which variable is declared. So block scope, these are main, these are y, these are a value, this is nested block. Storage class. So each variable has a storage class. Determine the lifetime during which variable is in memory. Some variables are created only once, so global variable created only once. Some variables are recreated many times, so local variables are created many times. So auto, there are 4 storage classes in C++. Auto class means auto created each time a block in which they are exist in entire. Register, same as auto, but tells the compiler to make as fast as possible. Static, created only once, even if it is a local variable. External, global variables declared elsewhere. So 4 types of storage class: auto, register, static, and external or global. Argument passing in functions, there are actually two types: pass by value, pass by reference. This is inline functions. Inline functions are those functions body is inserted in place of the function called statement during the compilation process. So inline keyword is used to define inline functions. So syntax: inline, return type, function name, formal parameters, function body. So inline functions frequently execute interface functions. Expanding function called inline can produce faster runtime. So like the register specify inline is actually just a request, not a command to the compiler. Inline functions program to find square. This function overriding. So multiple functions to share the same name with different signatures, different types of arguments, different data types. So this is integer, my function integer, I return I here only integer, and one parameter pass here integer, my function integer, return I statement. That means same name, same return type, but here parameter is only one, we have 2 parameters passed. Function template, a generic function defines a general set of operations that will apply to various types of data. So a single general procedure can be applied to a wide range of data. So this is function template syntax. So template keyword is used in class type, return the function parameter list, body of the function. So why constructor that program to sort integer list? This is recursive function. So program to find family is call itself, function call itself is recursive. Now come to class and objects. So this is for new introduction, new style. If we use, so include header, include string using namespace standard STP. No style, include string products. So new header file. So namespace simply declarative reasons. The purpose of a namespace is to localize the names of identifier to avoid name collisions. So IString match string forms of contents of namespace is called standard. It is STP. This is class specifications. So class keyword is used, class name, data members, member functions, and class is ended with semicolon. So this is example. These are data members, this is member functions, so this is class student, so integer student ID, class name, character, student name, for read data, print data, this member. So visibility of data members and member functions. So there are 3 visibility modes. First, class specification, so public access by member functions and all non-member functions in the program. Private access by only member functions of class. Protected, similar to private but access by all member functions of immediate derived class. Default, all items default in the class are private. So this is private by default. If we declare this, then all the member and member functions are private. And if we specifically give, then public and public visibility mode. So class objects instancing the process of creating object of the type syntax, class name, then object name. So student st. Okay. You can get three objects, student st1, st2, st3. So the class objects you see, student 1, this is student 2, student, and student 3, three objects of 10 Rama, this, and this is object 2, this is object. This is, so in this way I already discussed some basic concept of C++ class and object in another class. So today I end that class here. Okay, thank you.